Sex trafficking by Abdurrahman Al Khalifa. The global and local context. United Nations Protocol defines sex trafficking as the human trafficking involves the recruitment, transportation, transfer, harboring of receipt of persons by means of the threat or use of force or other forms of oppression. Why is it deviant? Heber argued about sex work and sex trafficking being conflated by the Swedish law as a consequence of hidden agendas. The awareness of other forms of human trafficking, such as the trafficking of cheap labor, is relatively low in Sweden. Sex work has instead been reframed as a sex trafficking problem. I will explain the different sex traffic types. First of all, sexual exploitation. This is when someone is being deceived, coerced, or forced to take part into sexual activity. Places where someone could be sexually exploited is prostitution, brothels, massage or sauna, escort agencies, pole or lap dancing, forced marriage, stripping on a webcam, phone sex lines, internet chat rooms, pornography, mail order brides, and sex tourism. All types of labor within every industry are susceptible to labor exploitation. Some of the common sectors are manufacturing, factory work, hospitality, construction, agriculture, fishing. Domestic servitude. A domestic worker or helper is a person who works within the employer's home, performing a variety of tasks. This arrangement becomes exploitive when there are restrictions on the domestic workers' movement, and they are forced to work long hours for little pay. They may also suffer physical and sexual abuse. Places when someone can be in domestic servitude in a private home or in a community, such as a commune. Forced marriage. This is when a person is put under pressure to marry someone. They may be threatened with physical or sexual violence or placed under emotional or psychological distress to achieve these aims. Situations where you may find forced marriage used to gain access into a country, to gain access to benefits. Forced criminality. This is when somebody is forced to carry out criminal activity through coercion or deception. Forced criminality can take many forms, including drug trade, begging, pickpocketing, bag snatching, ATM theft, selling of counterfeit goods. Forced criminality also encompasses social welfare fraud. This takes place when exploiters falsely apply for tax credits and other welfare benefits using the victim's details. It is not only the state that is the victim of social welfare fraud, there is often horrific abuse used against the individual in order to coerce them into falsely applying for benefits. Child soldiers. These are children and young people ranging from as young as 4 up to 18 who are used for any military purpose. It affects both males and females. Children may be used for frontline combat, which means they are made to commit acts of violence or within auxiliary roles such as informants or kitchen hands. Often the children are also sexually abused. This type of practice is most prevalent in parts of Africa and Asia. Organ harvesting. The trafficking in organs involves removing a part of the body, commonly the kidneys and liver, to sell, often as an illegal trade. Organs can be taken in a number of ways. Trade. A victim formally or informally agrees to sell an organ, but are then cheated because they are not paid for the organ, or are paid less than the promised price. Ailments. A vulnerable person is treated for an ailment which may or may not exist, and the organs are removed without the victim's knowledge. Extortion. A victim may be kidnapped from their family and organs removed without consent. Relationship between law, policy, and theory. Defining sex trafficking and its actor is problematic due to other issues involved, such as borders protection from migrants and prostitution. The United Nations estimates the number of trafficking victims at more than 30 million, with the largest number originating in Asia. Assessing the real magnitude and scope of sex trafficking is difficult due to contrasting definitions of the phenomenon. The contrasting definitions of the phenomenon can be divided into two themes. Neo-abolitionists, prostitution equals trafficking and should be eliminated. Neo-regulationists, trafficking, forced prostitution versus sex work, willing form of labor that should be decriminalized and legalized. International law on sex trafficking. The two most recent attempts at defining, preventing, and prosecuting human trafficking of the international law are the United Nations Convention against Transnational Organized Crime and the United Nations Protocol against the smuggling of migrants by land, sea, and air. These were created by the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. According to King, the standard for how a trafficked victim should be treated is explained in two international agendas: human rights standards for the treatment of trafficking persons, and recommended principles and guidelines on human rights and human trafficking. The case study I chose is sex trafficking of women in New York City. New York City is a major destination for sex trafficking. 17,500 people are reportedly trafficked to the US each year. Victims are offered T-visa, which allows them to gain benefits and services from the Federal Department of Health and Human Services. 5,000 children are commercially exploited for sex. Solution. What needs to be changed? National and international agents should reinforce the rights of immigrants and workers, including sex workers. Not criminalize sex trafficking as a one-dimensional phenomenon. Measures to protect real victims, including illegal migrants. Not deport them. Sex workers should not be led to turn innocent people in as traffickers, for fear of being deported. In order to guarantee fundamental human rights to migrants and laborers, sex trafficking should be addressed in the broader context of human trafficking.